Cathy.
Lovely, thank you very much. So quite a change of pace then. Two excellent presentations we've just had, and to think about that, to be able to carry out the work that these people are promoting, then you need to be registered and ready for action yourself. So this is the theme of today's topic, is talking about revalidation. And I know quite a lot of you are students out there, but this will come into force once you're qualified, and some people will have revalidated already. Is there anyone that's done it in the last year? Yeah, quite a few. So you'll know the process, but you also need to keep up to date with the next session. So revalidation then is the process that all midwives and nurses need to engage with to demonstrate that they practice safely and effectively throughout their career. And this is cited by the RCM. So that's what we have to think about. We need to just be able to demonstrate that we do practice safely and effectively for the benefit of our women that we care for and our families. So it's a bit confusing. I know when this was first mooted that we were going to have revalidation, people were confused and all the words out there, a portfolio, professional development, reflection, evidence, lifelong learning, reflective discussion and registration. Where does that all begin, start and end? Confusing, it needn't be. This is all just the general words that you'll come across throughout your career. And again, for students, you're used to reflecting practice in your portfolio documents, your practice documents, and this is really just a continuation of that. And for qualified midwives, we have the advantage over nurses because we've kept portfolios for years with the NMC. So it's just really a transition and actually a simplified version of the old portfolios. So what do we need to revalidate? We need evidence of 450 practice hours. And for those of you with a dual registration that are still nursing as well as midwifery, then you do need to have 900 hours for your dual registration to remain on the register as a nurse and a midwife, and 35 hours of continued professional development. And 20 hours of that includes participatory learning, evidence of good health and character, and indemnity cover, which we'll talk about a bit more in a minute. So your evidence of practice hours, for most of you who are practicing midwives, that's quite simple to do. But people that are in diverse, different settings, they're anxious that they're not able to demonstrate that learning. But educationalists can, because they're supporting students. I myself, I do work besides my editing work. I am also an honorary lecturer at the University of Nottingham. I do some work out in India where I'm trying to support the student midwives to get professional status in India. So again, that all adds to the portfolio. And as Sue was just mentioning, I've co-edited a book with a colleague. It accompanies, just to get a plug in, it accompanies the Miles textbook for midwives, and it's just a small reference book, just a little spiral-bound pocket book. And again, that's all evidence that you're contributing. Not that I'm saying that you'll all be writing books, etc., but there are other ways of getting this experience. Part of that is today. When you think of your 35 hours of CPD, you're all here. You're all going to spend 8 hours here at the conference. That all contributes as well. Other things that you can add on for your practice hours, if you're demonstrating the evidence within the portfolio, is your contract. That's an example that you are having these practice hours. Your contract is evidence. So, what you need to do, in some of the literature I've looked at, this comes in different orders, and they put the professional development first, when actually I think you need to be able to declare your health and good character. If you can't demonstrate that you're of good health and good character, then there's no point continuing through the rest of that sequence. So I think that comes foremost. And as midwives, we are all of excellent character, aren't we? The health, though, if somebody is off long-term sick or you're off on maternity leave, having a baby, this can be declared to the NMC, and there are exceptions that will put you in good stead for continuing your portfolio. So if you are off with ill health for a number of months even, don't think that you can't then register. Sorry, I've got a bit of hay fever. So that's the first thing. So now you're all clear, you're all healthy, you're all good characters, you're not mass murderers. Then you need to ensure that you are actually safe to practice. Are you covered by indemnity? Do you have an indemnity arrangement in place? And this should be through your trust. And again, there is a lot of debate with independent midwives. They've had some difficulties with accessing indemnity and insurance, but I think this is all being sorted at the moment, isn't it? So your trust should supply your indemnity. You also have the support of your union, for example, the RCM. So again, this can go down as evidence in your portfolio. And practice hours we've just talked about. So you've got your insurance in place, you're safe to practice. You then can show that you have got your practice hours. Then we go on to your written reflective accounts. You do need to demonstrate that you can reflect on situations in practice. This doesn't have to be academic writing. It can be just descriptive writing. And then some practice-related feedback, which again I'll talk about in a minute. Practice-related feedback is discussions with people in practice of certain situations that may have happened to you, and you want to discuss that and talk about it. It can also be reflections from the women that you've cared for or the parents. They can send back some comments and you can keep that. Say, for example, thank you letters or particular comments that those parents have made to you. They can be recorded and kept as evidence. And then your continued professional development, which is through days like this, study days, and I can give you a few more ideas in a moment on that. Reflective discussion. Within your portfolio, you need to demonstrate that you have had a reflective discussion with somebody else that's on the same register as yourselves. So somebody else that's registered with the NMC, you will have that discussion with them. This can be your manager. It's quite easy if it is your manager, because they can also go on to the next stage that you need to demonstrate of your confirmation. It doesn't have to be your manager. It can be a colleague or somebody from another trust that you want to discuss it with. Following on from your reflective discussion, you do need to have a confirmation signature. So this is a discussion of your portfolio with someone else. And again, as I said, with your reflective discussion, if it is your manager, that manager can actually look at both parts of your portfolio. But the confirmation actually doesn't have to be a registrant, an NMC registrant. It can be somebody else. For example, if you work in a different setting, say within a Sure Start Children's Centre, for example, you may not have other midwives or other health professionals working with you. So it could be the manager of the Sure Start Centre. That's quite acceptable, but the NMC may want to see further evidence of your portfolio, so you would need a bit more information within there as to that confirmation. And then that leads to your actual validation. So, just some ideas to help you with this. As I said, your CPD is attending conferences. It can be visits to other trusts or other areas of interest you might have. You might want to spend some time with a specialist midwife, for example, somebody specialising in smoking cessation, in diabetes, substance abuse. You may want to spend some time with them and learn from their experiences, and this can all be evidence in your professional development. You might want to look at some research, for example, the work that we've heard about earlier. You may want to seek out that research, speak to those people, or have a look at the writing that they've done, the papers they've written. And you can do that as individuals, or you can do it in a group. Within your work area, you could form a little writing group where you can discuss and debate pieces of the latest research and literature, and this keeps you up to date with the latest trends that are happening within midwifery. And just to get another plug in, as Sue told you, I'm actually editor of the MIDIRS journal, and within the journal we have reviewed abstracts. So another piece of evidence, you could review a paper, and that review could be critiqued, and it could actually go into publication, it could be published, and that again would go into your portfolio as evidence of your professional development, which I think is a very good idea. It also gets you used to writing. And also, if you're mentoring students are writing reflective pieces, they're also writing assignments. And if you're up to date with the current research and you have an understanding of critiquing the research, you're able then to support your students in more ways than just actual practice development in the ward situation. And all these pieces of evidence that you're collecting and putting into your portfolio all have to relate to the code, which you're all aware of and you've all seen. And just briefly, on the front page, it's prioritising people, practising effectively, preserving safety, and promoting professionalism and trust. And they're the four main things that need to shine out through your evidence that you are actually practicing what you preach within the code. Another way of professional development is multidisciplinary working, which we were discussing earlier. Is again part of your group work is to get together with the doctors that you work with, the physiotherapists, the dietitians, get together and speak to them and see what sort of work they're doing and how that fits into your role. And that broadens your horizons as to women's needs, really. You can incorporate everything that a woman needs by being able to access these other disciplines. And as I've just mentioned, letters, thank you letters are really useful. But just putting a thank you letter within your portfolio doesn't really mean an awful lot. What I would suggest you do is just think to yourself, what was it about your care that you gave that woman, that family? What was it that made them put pen to paper and write that thank you note? Because sometimes that's quite hard to do if you've got a busy life, you've got a new baby and everything's going on and you just can't think about it. But it must have been something really special for them to take that time to write to you and thank you. And I'm just thinking of an example from many years ago that I can use as a reflection. When I worked on the community, part of my community was a circus. The circus overwintered in this particular area. And I visited a couple that were having the first baby. The father was the ringmaster, so he was used to being in charge. He was really strong and really macho man with the traditional moustache. And the woman was a trapeze artist, so very fit, but not in the hierarchy of the circus. Had the baby, mum was coping really well, and then one morning I went in, and at the time we had the notes in brown envelopes, and I went in and there was this beautifully written poem on the back of the brown envelope, and I thought, this is interesting, what's this about? And the ringmaster couldn't express his feelings that he was struggling with coming to terms with not being in control and not in charge of his life, because this new baby had just turned the caravan upside down. It was all in an upheaval and there were bottles and cups and plates everywhere. But he'd written all his feelings down in this beautiful poem that I've still got today. And I didn't realise till later what he was doing. He was asking me for help. Through poetry, he couldn't bring himself to talk to me because he was trying to be macho and strong, but he knew when I took that envelope away, I would read on there what his struggles were. And I kept that in my portfolio. I've still got it, as I said now. But reflecting on that, it made me think more about how fathers cope with new parenthood. So again, you reflect on that, and you can write about how that made you feel, what you thought about it, and how you can improve that for other people in the future. And I always think about that. How does that feel for the man? So things like that, when you get those thank you letters or those little messages from parents, just think, what's behind it? What was it that I did or I didn't do that I could do better another time? And that can all be written down and included. Also, if writing isn't your strong point, you can use photographs. If you've got any particular photographs of special events that have happened with your families, obviously getting permission for them, but you can use that as your descriptor and reflect upon that situation that you had through a picture, a photograph, or a drawing even you can do. So it doesn't have to be pure academic writing in your portfolio. So that's just a few ideas. It's endless, you can go on forever. So as we mentioned earlier in the chart I put up, the flow chart, your reflective discussion should be with another NMC registrant, and you link these reflective accounts back to your code again. So when you're writing about it, think, where does it fit in? Where am I prioritising the women and their families? How am I practising effectively? What am I doing effectively? What is it I'm actually doing that I'm feeling strong and positive in the work I do? How am I making that environment safe for the women and the families I'm caring for? Am I giving over a professional persona to these people? Do they have my respect as I respect them in their thoughts? And this can be things you talk about with the other registrant when you're talking about your reflections. Reflect on your areas of good practice. And also, it's very well saying, yes, I've done that, I'm really good, I do everything to the best of my ability. There's always something you can develop and you can move on to and do a little bit better, just that bit better. And that can go into your reflection as well. And then, ideally, your confirmer. This is the person that reads through your whole portfolio and discusses it with you, and they confirm that what you've written is honest and true, a true reflection of what you've done. And you record this meeting on the NMC form, and this has to be signed and completed by your confirmer following the discussion of your documentation. And to make life easy, the NMC have the forms all out online. You can look online and they're all there, all the sections that you need to fit in. They're very straightforward and simple to use, so it takes away the fear of writing them. And then your final words I've got, because again people are anxious about when and how they do this. The website is there, the registration. You need to register before you start your application. Keep your details up to date. If you keep your portfolio up to date, you won't have that last minute panic when the time comes, which we all do, don't we? Check the date your application's due, and your application opens 60 days before the actual due date, so that gives you 2 months to get it all ready. But have it all ready before you go in there, so you don't have to keep stopping off and coming back to it. And above all, we're all good at what we do. We're all professional. Take pride in everything you achieve. When you look back on your portfolio, you think, yeah, I can really do this job. I'm good at this. I've done a good service for these women and their families. So look back on it with pride and keep it. And then I've just put up some resources. Obviously, the NMC is your first port of call. The RCM have some really good online information and resources for you to use. I also picked up some good articles in other journals. The Nursing Standard last year had a couple of really good articles in there to look at. And then some websites for keeping yourself up to date with contemporary issues. The Academy of Fabulous Stuff is brilliant. It's for nursing and other allied health professionals and midwifery, but anything really good, any good innovations are put on the Academy of Fab Stuff, and it's really worth looking at. And then recently, Sheena and Anna Byram, who I think a lot of you know, Anna is editor of Practicing Midwife. They've just set up a new website with current information on social policies, any government issues that are moving around at the moment, they're on there. And also myself, MIDIRS, we have the journal and the library information database. We also have a free newsletter and the website that helps to keep you up to date with information as well. So these are just a few of the resources, but if you search around, there's loads of help and information out there. And if anyone does want any individual help, I'm happy for you to email me and I can try and support you the best I can. Thank you very much. Yes.